It's Major Label Debut, the podcast about major label debuts. My name is Graham Wright, and this is part 2 of my conversation with Ryan Miller, the singer, guitar player, founding member of the great Guster. We were having our first conversation, and he had what they call a hard out in showbiz, and maybe other bizes as well, I wouldn't know. We were having such a good time talking that we thought we would get back together the next day, and we yacked a whole bunch more, and this is that. So without further ado, here's the rest of my chat with Ryan Miller from Guster. First of all, thank you so much for returning to Major Label Debut for a follow-up conversation, our first ever. You've made it through to the second interview. Congrats.
Well, I felt badly because I had a hard out, and usually I don't, you know what I mean? I did feel like we were in the middle of a thought. And so I was like, oh, well, we can finish this. And then I was wondering, what was that? Maybe they don't want to talk again. And I'm like, oh, hey man, we want to have some coffee? Want to go see a movie?
That's the dream of the podcast, is for me to have friends finally. I always talk about it like, you meet someone in a band at a party or at an awards thing or whatever, and you just talk to them because you both have the same frame of reference.
Yeah, you have the same shorthand. It's like, oh yeah, we know like 1,000 of the same people.
We have the same gripes.
Easy. Yeah, that's true.
We talked about your literal major label debut last time, and so this time I just wanted to sort of talk around some of the stuff, some of the threads that we didn't get to tug on that hard. Speaking of gatekeepers and of distribution, Guster in that regard has come full circle. You self-released your first record, and you are back to self-releasing your records now.
I mean, we have an incredible management team that we've had pretty much since the beginning. I don't know if I told this story last time, but our manager, we met him right around the same time we were getting interest from major labels, and we had met him, and he was just like, he was an accountant, and he had gotten into UCLA to go to music business school. And he was great. He was like, and we really liked him. And these major labels were starting to kind of sniff around. And I think we like maybe put one person on the phone with them, and they were like, we really like Dalton. And we were like, hey dude, why don't you not go to college? Like, don't go to grad school. Like, just be our manager, learn how to do it. So yeah. He didn't go to UCLA, and he became our manager, and we got signed, and we just got really lucky in a lot of ways. I mean, he's a hyper competent, very honest, and now he's like kind of not, I wouldn't say a titan of the industry, but a beloved manager. He only managed us for many, many years. And then when we started to slow down and we weren't working like 250 days a year anymore, he started to take on other artists. But now he manages Father John Misty, he manages Mitski, he manages Lucy Dacus and a third of Boy Genius. Like, his roster is great, and not by genre, but just like really authentic people who kind of are Guster-esque in a way of like fan forward, not top down in terms of like, let's get a hit song, but like want to go out there and work and tour. And he built a management, and I think I told you he was involved with Network for a moment, and now we have a day-to-day guy and a bunch of different people. He has a whole agency that deals with all of us, and they're just great. I mean, it's a huge part of our success. I mean, we have a meeting every Tuesday, and we like go through all this stuff, and it's really incredible to have like 4 or 5 people on this call and be like, okay, we're doing this social media thing here. We got to figure out what's going on with the Kennedy Center. We got to do this. Does everybody know what they're doing for the Vermont shows? Like, we're going to talk about summer. Let's do artwork. And there's no version of this at this level that could work if it were the 4 of us talking to each other. Like, we barely talk to each other. You know what I mean? It requires us to have assignments.
Well, we found that, we started self-managing Tokyo Police Club in like 2016, 17. And at first it was amazing. I found that as time went on and our manager became part of a company, and we had a day-to-day person, and someone would book our flights, and someone would rent the van, and someone would take care of everything. And we were also getting older, and we were for the first time sampling the notion of like, I have other friends than just these guys in the band. Oh, there's a life outside of the band, which we, like I said last time, we were like 18 when we started. So it was really just the 4 of us for a long time. And so we started to unplug, and they filled in the gap seemingly seamlessly.
Yeah.
And then, managers take, or traditionally managers take some kind of like 17, 18, whatever percent cut off the top. And we were, there's an amount of money you can make as a band where that really works. And then there's an amount you can make where, and that's where we were looking at our tour statements. We were like crunching the numbers. Josh was like really had his jeweler's loop out, was pouring over this stuff. And we don't tour fancy. We were in the van. We're selling our own merch.
Doubling up in hotel rooms and the whole thing.
Short of going back to sleeping 2 to a bed, and we're now 33 years old.
Yeah, we're grown-ass men.
There's nowhere to cut costs, and yet money's just disappearing. And when we finally realized, it's disappearing into this particular black hole. And so it got really exciting for a second because it felt like, now it's a small business. And now we've sort of said, we're not going to have a hit in America. We're not going to be Death Cab for Cutie. We're not going to be Kings of Leon.
Yeah.
But we can be Tokyo Police Club. And with just the 4 of us handling everything, A, the money's there. And B, oh my God, it's like the old days, making pins in the basement and emailing promoters and stuff. And then a few years passed and I started to think, hey, I think maybe we could keep it. We could maintain it. But like you say, if no one's there to sort of
juice it,
you got other shit going on. And you don't want to think about your band full time. And that's kind of what it takes.
Well, and I agree. And what's actually I've found too is that you kind of have to run at full tilt just to maintain it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a relatively new, maybe it's not, but to me, it feels like a relatively new phenomenon because there's so many distractions and because we have so many things that if you aren't innovating, putting out records, writing new songs, touring all the time, then when you do go out the next time, the treadmill has kicked you off the thing. And so it's funny, I do feel like the band has grown probably in the last 2 years, which is nuts. But before that, we kind of were just staying in one place, but we were running at full speed. We weren't just cool, man, let's write some tunes and put out a record. We were full time this all the time just to kind of maintain it. And that is really hard, especially as we became husbands and fathers and breadwinners, for families and stuff. So it's not, there's no shame in what you're saying at all. It's just, it's a nearly impossible task. And so much of it has to do with luck and timing and all that. And having that conversation, honestly, I'm sure is really hard, but also probably life-saving. So you don't resent each other and yourself and fuck up everything,
We played a gig in the summer with Bare Naked Ladies, your pals, and we were hanging out after the show in the hotel bar with, Tyler and whichever of the guys were there.
Probably Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin was there. And Tyler he's so great. And he's from almost the same town as us. And he was just sort of waxing rhapsodic about how great it is to be in a band and sort of around our band ending, sort of saying why, how could you, why would you ever stop? And he was being so nice and complimentary that I just let him cook because he's the drummer from Bare Naked Ladies and he's telling me how great I am. I'm not going to interrupt. But afterwards, I was sort of going over it in my mind and thinking, that if I was in the Bare Naked Ladies, I would never stop. But we have to as you say, never stop running. We have to say yes to everything.
Yeah,
we have to go work our asses off at every single thing. Drain yourself. Never get to stop and get your bearings. You never get to take a year off. And then at the end of all of it, you make enough money to rent your Toronto apartment.
$48,000.
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a bummer to realize that, oh my God, there actually is an amount of money that I can't do this for. I would have said for years and years, of course I do it for free. I'd keep doing it. And I will keep doing some version of it. But you can't be in an indie rock touring band full time for barely any money. It's just
forever.
It's not sustainable. It kills you. And it makes the band suck, or it will if you do it long enough.
Yeah, I never thought I would be 52 years old and talking about this band. It just was not even on my radar. And it's I talked to our manager yesterday and I was after because we did this Eras tour and kind of the takeaway from it, which was interesting because I was okay, we just did this play tour thing and it was really inspiring. And I was we just have to keep going. And he's he was probably the first person to say you can't just go out there and be a band anymore. There's just even our band that means a lot to, not millions and millions of people, but some.
Absolutely.
That last tour, we just did half the states and we sold something 30,000 tickets or something, and that's a lot of people to come see your band do a chronological theatrical retelling of your band. And so, I was talking to him. I was we got to just keep fucking it up, man. We just got to keep pushing, just keep inventing things because, and like, he loves to talk about Flaming Lips and how they do such a great job of this, like every time they go out, they make it a production. They have a story. They're going to do Yoshimi. They're going to do, Soft Bulletin. They're going to do whatever they did with Miley Cyrus, where they did like a Brian Wilson record or something. That was like constantly innovating. And I think I think of them as kindred spirits in that way of like, not only do you have to work hard the whole time, but you have to take the creativity that you want to put into songwriting into the entire business. I think, honestly, starting a podcast is a great example of that, or writing on a TV show and writing your band into it. I mean, like,
sure,
not dissimilar. I think that the fact that you guys are kind of thinking about it as like, barf multi-hyphenates, but like as people that aren't just songwriters or a touring band is really crucial. And I'm definitely, people ask me what I do, and I used to say like, oh, I'm in a band, and I still do sometimes, but now with all this other stuff, I'm just like, oh, I guess I'm an artist. Like I make stuff, I'm a film composer, I write theater, or I play it, but like, I think about it holistically. And I think that bands, maybe not new bands, but like bands like us need to really figure out how to keep just telling a really compelling narrative around what they're doing.
There has to be a reason for people to get a babysitter and go. And shows are expensive, and drinks are expensive, and transit's expensive. And if you're going to the city, a hotel is expensive. And it's like that night out at the Tokyo Police Club concert could be a $300 proposition. And
easy.
I mean, I wish we lived in the world where it's just, hey, we're a good band and we made another good record and you should just come see us and everyone goes home happy. But we don't live in that world. And so,
is there a version, like, did you guys discuss a version where you didn't tour that much and you just made records?
Not really, especially the way our band worked. It wasn't necessarily, how can I put this? It wasn't necessarily as creatively fulfilling for everyone.
Of course, yeah.
And absent touring, which I think was, certainly for me, going out on the road and even selling merch and doing some of the business end of things sort of scratched an itch for me that I didn't always get to scratch in the studio. So I really liked that, but also I started to wonder if I did still like it, or if it was just, you ever like, am I just holding on by my fingernails to like the 9th version of something that I lost interest in around the 4th version, but I never gave myself permission to consider that maybe actually it's like, I don't have to do this.
I mean, it's an incredible conversation to have, like as a musician. I mean, I feel it much more distinctly in LA around my writer, like exactly what we were talking about before, like what's going on with some people in LA who are just like, because that town, especially with writing and stuff, can keep you in it as like, not like I just sold a pilot, but like, oh, I sold a script, and like, but it might be 3 years until you do another one.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, or especially as an actor, it's like, oh, I got booked on this commercial or whatever. And you kind of get thrown these life wires, but there's like a question of like, how long are you going to do this where your time could sort of be spent somewhere else? And it's rarely, I think, well, I wouldn't say rarely, but it's not always a merit-based decision. I mean, these things are none of this is merit-based. It's just, it is luck and timing and what people are looking for at a certain, where you are and who you know and all these things. I mean, I think it's a really grown up way to look at something. Like, I don't know, like if you're a Dr. Dog fan at all, but like I'm a really big fan of their music and have recently come pals with Eric Slick, the drummer, and like they kind of quit touring. They basically were like, we're going to be done touring. We're just going to make records. And now they're playing like 3 or 4 shows a year. And I think they make just as much money as they did before, because they'll be like Red Rocks and Forest Hills and like a couple other big ones. And I'm like, all right, man, like that's really cool. Like that's an interesting way to do it. Like I was like, we should break up. Guster should break up and then do a reunion tour. Like right away.
We made our biggest record, came out in 2010, and then trying to capitalize on it and getting jerked around by label guys who didn't hear a hit and everything. We spent 4 years making the follow-up.
Oh yeah.
And we came out of the gate in 2014 expecting to pick up where we left off. And like you said, you get kicked off the treadmill.
Yeah.
Shit. LCD Sound System broke up and came back in like 18 months. We just spent 4 years telling everyone, we'll be right back. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. We're in the studio. We blew it. And our farewell tour was our biggest tour ever by like a pretty wide margin.
Was there navel gazing around that? I mean, like, fuck, guys, should we really be? Were you pretty well resigned at that point that you would?
Well, it was very plain to me, and I think to the other guys, that if it wasn't our farewell tour, it wouldn't have been, because we had just done a 10-year anniversary tour on that 2010 big album that we snuck it in 2021 before Omicron came out. You could get vaccinated and go to concerts and be fine.
I remember, yeah.
It was a beautiful moment. And that tour was really fun, but this tour was big. It was enormous.
Yeah, because you had a story.
Last Chance.
You had a narrative, yeah.
I think about the Hold Steady, who are another band that does a really interesting thing now where they just kind of go do residencies. We'll go to London, play 4 shows, Toronto, 4 shows.
That's right.
They have the right kind of fan base. They have the big catalog. They can do unique sets. I love that band. And I used to go see them every time they came to Toronto. And then once I missed it, I was like, I'll catch them next time. They come back every year. And now I kind of like, it's been 5 years since I saw them play. But if they announced that they were coming back to Toronto for one final Hold Steady show, I would absolutely get off the couch and go. And they would probably play at, a 3,000 cap room instead of 4 nights to 400.
Yeah, but you only get one chip like that, really.
Unless you're LCD.
Unless you're LCD sound system. What a genius.
What a genius.
Yeah, I'm a Hold Steady fan too. And Craig's a great example too, because I think he wrote a book or more than one book. And
I think he has a couple books. He has a podcast now.
Yeah. And like, that's what I mean. It's like, that's the only way to kind of make Hold Steady work, because there are fans, like legit fans like you, who are like, well, okay, here we go on our 8th album or our 9th album or Tad's back or whatever. Yeah. And then you're like, well, how do you do that? And I think that's why it's like smart for Craig to be like, okay, I can pull in people from a podcast. I can pull in people from my literary work or whatever. And it can kind of help keep that buoyancy up. But it is an endless struggle on that front. But it's also like, okay, I mean, no one promised you that this was going to be like some factory job in your hometown that you like get when you're 25 and you retire at 55. Like,
well, that's interesting, because I always felt like, maybe this is just my own interpretation, but there was kind of like an implicit promise or an implicit suggestion, which is just the myth making of rock and roll. But it looked not just fun and not just glamorous or rewarding, but in a sense kind of easy. And even, I'd watch Meeting People is easy, and they're miserable and grumpy the whole time, but all the stuff they're miserable and grumpy about is obviously amazing and fun. And I was like, well, if that's all that sucks is that your album is too successful and too many Japanese journalists want to interview you and their questions are all the same,
not that great. Yeah,
I'm down. Sign me up. And I think I really took it as a given that it was not just possible, but likely that you could get that kind of like rock and roll tenure where you can just make a record when you feel like it, you do a tour when you feel like it, the kind of thing that now your Death Cabs for Cutie or whatever seem to have, where they can kind of do what the spirit compels them to do. Kind of. But I see, you're like, that's not even real either.
That's
I'm such a
real.
sucker.
Well, first of all, yeah, there's like two things. One, there's this like, you're talking, I think I've always framed that as like, oh, you made it.
Yeah.
Like it was always about making it. And it was a little bit, to bring it really home, it was about getting signed. Like when I was a teenager, it was like, oh, we got signed, man. We did it. And it's like, all right, motherfuckers, let's go. And you lean back in your chair and you smoke your cigar because you got signed.
Yep.
And maybe that mythology, that myth making began in the 70s or 80s, where you could be Bruce Springsteen and make 4 or 5 records before you had to have a hit. Mm-hmm. There was artist development in a way that didn't exist now. But yeah, I think it's kind of like, it's where the work sort of starts. It is that it's that idea that you don't really ever get to rest at this point. There is no, we've made it and done it. But like the Death Cab thing, that's what I was going to say, is like, those guys just went out and did like a Postal Service transatlanticism tour. They couldn't just be like, here's our 9th album and let's go do it. Like they got the memo too, that they need to find a way to compel people to get back in. And I'm sure that they do great when they don't have that narrative stuff. But the fact that like I've got a couple buddies in that band and Postal Service, and like, that was the biggest tour they ever had by like 3 acts. I think they went around the world twice,
looked huge
on that Postal Service record, which is really, and then brought the Death Cab thing along with it. But it like, when I saw it, Death Cab opened up for Postal Service. So like, that was really helpful for them and really smart.
Oh, yeah. We toured with Weezer back in like 2008, and it was when the Red album came
It's like,
out.
which record was that?
Yeah, and it was really an interesting thing because now I look at Weezer and I see a band that is like fully understands how to play the game and how to do, you know, whether it's a Blue Album tour or a covers album based on a meme or whatever. And I feel like this was the moment. It was this arena tour, and I'm not trying to talk shit about the great Weezer, but we're like, oh shit, a Weezer arena tour. This is going to be like going on tour with the Beatles.
We made it.
And it was just, the whole thing was a little more muted. And they seemed, even like Rivers wasn't really singing any of the hits, you know, they were like, Pat wasn't playing drums. It was interesting. But then right after that, they seemed to kind of give their heads a shake and say like, okay, maybe actually if we do an album tour. That's one of the first bands I was aware of doing an album tour back in, I don't know, the old days. And they really got wise to it. And now they're fine.
And also I think, and that totally tracks with what my version of that arc is. And also I think Rivers was just like, fuck it, we're writing hit songs too. And like in LA, and like I don't know if you ever saw his like chart that he made where he like wrote down the chords of famous songs. And I know he's like definitely out there, and like I think we can use the word neurodivergent in a non-pejorative way. And also just kind of got that was the memo, that they weren't gonna just be able to make blue record like or pink or red albums and be like, okay, well this isn't, we need more. And then for him to kind of figure that out. And I agree, they've done a good job. And like, especially with like didn't they do like a co-headline with like Fall Out Boy or somebody really big? It was something.
They've done a few good packages.
Where it was just like, oh,
Blink one at one point.
Yeah, it was Blink that I'm like, oh, it was a little bit of a head scratcher, but also like kind of made sense in a way that I was very uncynical about, of like, this is just smart. Like you're kind of like, figuring this out. But I think, and this is kind of the bummer of this whole conversation, is like, it'd be great if we didn't have to think about. And what's good is we haven't actually, you and I, we've this whole conversation, we haven't talked about social media.
Yes.
Which I think is interesting, because I don't think it is about social media. And I don't think that any of the stuff we're talking about is like, well, you got to build an audience through social media. Like the things we're talking about, podcasts, writing books, co-writing in LA, having a friend that's a writer that will write your TV show. Like those are the things that I think are much more compelling than a social media buzz. And I really believe it. And like, it's fun to watch things kind of catch. Like the MJ Linderman thing has been kind of a funny thing to happen. And I'm really into this dude, Cameron Winter. You know this guy? He's the lead singer of the band Geese.
Yeah, someone else was just talking about him with me.
Yeah. And it's happened in this way that like one of our managers, he stayed a day for Tillman, for Father John Misty, was like, have you fucked with this Cameron Winter record yet? And I was like, no, I listened to Geese, but it didn't grab me. And he's like, my other friend here, and he lives upstate somewhere, turned me on to it. You should listen. And I was like, okay. And then it was like a week later, it's like, have you listened yet? And I was like, no. And I listened. I was like, holy shit. It really blew me away. It was like it was a record on first listen where I'm just like laughing and smiling.
Kick you back and forth, watching the bells, watching the lights. What I want is far away. Talk to the moon, flatten her down. Make her watch the wind all night. She can't wait.
And then I started to find other people out there that are all kind of finding it in this way that's very organic, because it's music driven. And now, I was on his socials and he's like selling out everywhere, playing really small places and having to bump it up, and watching it happen that way, where it's like, it's just because the record's really fucking weird and musical and good. And you're like, well, this happens too. You know what I mean? I know he's already in a famous band. Like I know that Geese does well and like opened up for, King Gizzard and stuff, but it's just like, oh fuck, this is so fun. And I feel like I haven't gone that deep with the MJ Linderman stuff, but I really like a lot of the stuff that I've heard. And that feels really cool and organic too. Or like Katie, like Waxahachie.
You just settle in like a song. We know it. If I can keep up, we'll get right back to it.
It kind of makes you uncynical about this stuff, because those things were not social media driven. I mean, maybe there might have been a TikTok thing with some of this, but I think those three artists just have a tremendous amount of integrity and just made cool records. And I'm not cynical about the music industry because like those are three examples of artists that I think are going to have a real career that required no gatekeepers whatsoever. They just made cool records and kind of did the work. And now it seems to be happening for them. And that's really fun to watch, especially when you catch it early and you can kind of see it happening in real time.
You asked last time, like sort of what the gestalt of the podcast is. And that really gets at it, is this notion where, and we're all vulnerable to it. You want to make music, you love music, and you want to make music for real in some sense, whether it's for your job or to an audience or whatever. But then there's always these sort of carts that get easily put before the horse where it's, oh, well, if you're on social media, you can really promote your music well. And then you start to, or it's easy to start to forget about the music or let your choices about the music be governed by the marketing of the music. And you wake up one morning and you're putting all your creative energy into salesmanship rather than art. And that's the biggest version of it. But we kind of all do that to some degree. And it's that degree that really interests me, is where then your compass starts to point as you start to onboard all this new knowledge, whether it's about social media now or about radio 30 years ago or whatever the case may be.
I don't think that those parameters have really, I mean, they've changed a lot with social media, but even when we started a street program, we call them the Guster reps, or, I think maybe I told you about this before.
Yeah, the OG street team.
Yeah, but that was sort of a marketing thing hack that we had to, or the newsletter or the road journal or something. Like these were all kind of hacks that we had. So like those existed pre-social media too, but it was always like, I felt like it was driven, like it just doesn't work if you don't have good songs. Like it's really the advice that and people don't ask me for advice anymore. But if anybody ever asks me advice, like, what do I do? I'm a young band and I want to make it. I'm just like, write great songs. And that's kind of why I get really excited to talk about the Lenderman, Waxahachie, Cameron Winter stuff, because I'm like, they're great fucking songs. Like, they're just good songs, and people hear them, and my manager can be like, will you just fucking listen to the record? I'm like, fine, just to shut him up. And you listen and you're like, God, these are fucking great songs. And then I want to tell you about it on a podcast because I want you to listen to it. And you'll probably write to me and be like, those are great songs. And that's what gets me off. Like, that's what makes me uncynical about it, because it does still work that way.
And that's so interesting, because then that's sort of, when you send your batch full of demos to the label and the A&R guy says, ooh, I don't know, like, keep writing, I don't hear a single. I always found that really frustrating. I always found that really like insulting and annoying. But then we had once, when we were making this record that took 4 years, we sent like 20 demos. We'd been just working our asses off. And we got back an email that said, remember, every good chorus is a nursery rhyme. That was the whole email. No comments on anything.
I fucking hate that
like,
person.
Jesus, man. And for years, I complained. And then a couple of years ago, during lockdown, I got really into, going on Instagram and posting thoughts about songs I liked or whatever. And I was listening to Enema of the State, Blink-182. And I was like, shit, maybe every good chorus is a nursery rhyme.
I mean, that's the thing. There are rules with this, right? But they always can be broken. Like, I'm just, it gets funny because I have teenage kids and I got a 16-year-old. And so,
what are they listening to?
Well, my 16-year-old is super into like the shit that I'm into, but also turns me on to stuff. But like we went away for tour in January and they went to Slow Dive without me. And they were like sending me photos and I'm like, okay, we're doing this. Okay.
Yeah.
But also like there's some stuff that like TV Girl, like my older kid, and my son who's 14 is like super into Tyler, Creator, which is cool because like I don't really I like Igor but I like, he's really into the new record and he's like, I really want to, so we might go to Bell Center in Montreal to go see him this summer.
Yes.
And stuff. But it's really interesting to see, because we listen to a ton of music in the house, obviously, and like predominantly vinyl, because I just didn't want to have more screens going on. But it's funny, like when stuff will pop up, I'm like, why? Like Leo, my oldest, knows about Pavement. And I'm like, well, how do you know about this? Because we just have Slanted and Shannon, and we don't listen to it all that often because like my wife doesn't like Pavement. And like TikTok, and so Pavement like had a hit on TikTok, you know, and like this is where I also am like a defender of social media in a way, is because like
think about like Mac DeMarco. You know what I mean? Like that song that was huge was not probably, it was the wrong tempo. It was, you know what I mean? It was lazy. It probably wasn't. Maybe it wasn't Arizona. Maybe it was a nursery rhyme, but it's just like all the rules have been broken in a way with social media because, and it's not necessarily that it becomes more merit based, but it's so much easier for crazier shit to pop up. Like the things that get big on TikTok that then can turn into a career. Like I think the Lenderman thing was probably fueled a little bit by that. I don't know enough.
And it's this amazing thing where for bands like ours, yours and mine, you know, if your singles from the album didn't go on radio, then it was kind of like, okay, well, on to the next album as far as radio is concerned.
Exactly.
But with TikTok, a 20-year-old song or a 50-year-old song or a 100-year-old song tomorrow could suddenly be a hit again. And it's just this weird
100%
potential that never has existed. And now, I guess maybe if it was in a commercial or something was the closest thing, but that's not the same.
That was all you could try and get into a Volkswagen commercial or get onto the OC, you know? But even that was really about new music too. Like when those shows were breaking bands, Sync, Son of, or like Scrubs or whatever, a couple of those shows were like big shows, but it was always about new music mostly. And now you're right. It's genreless. It's like, it doesn't matter when you release the record at all. Like our drummer's always like, dude, this song has this 15-second hook. And he's not wrong. Like I could send you 5 things off our last record that were like, oh, I could see that being like a sound or whatever. But it's really like how it works. It is such a mystery. And I don't know. I'm uncynical about it in that way.
It's beautiful to talk to someone who's uncynical about it, because I think by the end, I was feeling pretty cynical. Maybe it's just easier to say goodbye to that chapter of my life if I just say, well, the whole industry's bullshit and poison anyway. So good riddance. But it's nice to hear your perspective on it, because I think it sounds true to me. Sounds plausible.
Yeah. And not to say it's not rife with all this stuff, you know.
It's still the music business.
It still is the music business. And there's still a lot of horrible people in places. And I don't know that it's been completely, you know, that the gatekeepers have been removed completely. But I just never wanted to be that guy. It was like, man, all the good music's back then, you know, like and I'm not like super into brand new stuff. Like, and I do kind of feel that way sometimes where I'm just like, I just don't have the depth of appreciation with some new stuff. Like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to know. I'm not really the poster boy for this in some ways. Like I will say I'm uncynical and I really do love music, and I still love, like, I will keep an open mind. And it's kind of funny. Like a lot of times when my kid will show me new music, I'm like, so what's the story? Like, where are they from? Like, what's the deal? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, right. Where storytelling was so important to me and is so important to me, that isn't necessarily the case for like my kids. They don't care where the artist is from. They don't care what they, and that's a really interesting. I don't know what that means. I just think it's interesting.
10 years ago or so, I did some radio stuff with CBC here in Canada. And before that, being in the band, I would always get frustrated by the way every album had to have a story. The press release had to be shaped. I was like, isn't it enough? Isn't the story just, we made a good record, check it out? And then I did a month of broadcast and I realized, there's nothing to talk about with these bands. And so the songs that I would gravitate to playing weren't songs that I hated. They were songs that I had liked and songs that I had something I could say about.
That's right.
And that was a real moment of realization for me.
And I don't know if I said that in my last one, because I say it in every fucking time I open my mouth, but like everything is storytelling. Everything.
Yeah.
And so that's right. And I think, we've never really like tried to go like top down with that in terms of record of like, okay, we're going to make a record about this. Kind of been like, well, let's just go get together. There will be a story in there probably. And that will be our challenge, is to like, what's the story? And I tried to do a lot of thinking around our last record of what's the story of this record, and kind of came up with something that was true, but not a great hook. Kind of like between you and me and whoever's listening to this podcast, like I'm going into the next record with a story in mind, almost for that reason, because I realized, because before I feel like, oh God, we have to come up with a story, and it felt laborious. But now I'm having, because I really believe that storytelling is everything. It's like, well, yeah, well, in the same way we think about touring, like what's going to compel people to come see the band? for the 25th time. It's like, what's going to compel someone to listen to this record? And I'm like, well, I got a story to tell and here's what it is. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. That sounds like an interesting story. Tell me more? It all started coming from publicists of like, well, they need a story here. And you're like, fuck you, man. The songs are the story. It's like, not really their fault.
Yeah.
They're storytellers. They need a story.
And you did. I wanted to ask about doing We Also Have Eras tour, which parenthetically, I really appreciated in general, just because Taylor, being the brilliant genius that Taylor is, Eras tour, great marketing. But I was like, every tour is an Eras tour, or at least it used to be. It's just, you just played songs from different eras. But you did one, as you've described, that was, you weren't just telling the story through playing the songs chronologically. You were literally going into the dorm room and recreating to some degree.
We had a script and props and costumes.
Josh of Tokyo and of Major Label Debut Podcast loves to talk about and compare the way that the hive mind memory works, where there's stories I've been telling for 15 years about the band that then I'll hear our drummer tell, and it's different.
We have the same thing.
I think every band must.
Our thing is like, we all think it happened to us. That's
right.
What Adam in our band, he's like, we all tell stories like it happened to me. It's like, that wasn't you, that was me. And I'm like, no, that happened to me. Like the hive mind works so that you really changes the molecules in your brain that makes you believe that you did it.
So when you were putting together the tour, putting together the script for the play and everything, what was that like? So specifically and deliberately, not just, answering some podcasters' questions about your story, but re-embodying this story from back when, did it change your perspective on your life?
Oh yeah. I mean, I will give 100% of credit, or like 98% of the credit, to Brian, our drummer, who wrote the script. And we went through it, like, because he and I kind of came up with the idea and just a thing. I was like, we need to do something. And it was this conversation. I was like, we got to have something for the tour. And I was like, let's do an underwater prom so people can dress up. Like we had done that at our thing. And he's like, yeah, that's pretty good, but let's keep thinking, you know what I mean? And he was really into Taylor Swift and was like, we should do an Eras tour. And I was like, and then it was just like, fuck. And because I was right in the middle of doing this play, writing this musical that was, and so I was already in like theatrical. I was like, dude, let's just fucking do it. Let's write a play and we'll tell the story of the band and we'll have props and we'll have costumes. And he was like, okay. And then we kind of jammed on like, what are our plot points? Like, what do we have to talk about? Like, we have to talk about meeting. We have to talk about the horrible record we did with this one producer that almost broke up the band. We got to talk about getting signed. We got to talk about meeting Steve Lillywhite, all these kind of things. And then he went away for a couple months and just came back with this like 15-page script. And it was pretty much there. I mean, it really was. He really it was built in 2 acts and, had a beginning and the middle and the end. And it was the first thing he really he had written our road journals and stuff, but it was the first major creative input that I'd had from kind of exclusively him in a while. And it was really great. And yeah. And every night we kind of got to relive this thing where we meet in the dorm and we kind of have this, end of act 1 where everything falls apart, but then we get back together and there's a moment of gratitude and we have a big finale. And then, we had a campfire thing at the end just because we start acoustic and end acoustic. And I think that is why it worked so well, is there was and I was really hoping for people to come see it for the first time. I loved when no one had seen the band before, because I'm like, well, this is it. And we start acoustic and then just like our band. And then after we plug in and it's the first time we kind of go in with the percussion and this whole thing. And it's a moment and the lights come on and it felt very theatrical and very Broadway in a way of oh, there's a real arc here to what the band is doing. And it was sort of emotional in a way, especially near the end, fuck, we don't get to do that thing again.
Closing night.
Yeah. Closing night. And it was just oh, that won't happen again in that way. And I'm sure you did a farewell tour, so you feel this very deeply, but it is kind of emotional. And it was really fun. It was really fun to tell the story every night.
Well, it's really interesting to me how it just, because the whole, or I've always found the touring thing is sort of this balance between, I'm doing air quotes, artifice and, I don't know, whatever the opposite of artifice is, some kind of purity.
Verisimilitude.
Yeah. It's a new thing every night, but also I've played the song 1,000+ times in my life. And even the set list, maybe halfway through the tour, we're the kind of band that tends to settle into a good
Oh,
set
you
list groove
do.
and stay more or less close to it if we're not doing multiple nights in a city or whatever. And obviously, every musician knows what it feels like to get into that highway hypnosis autopilot where you sort of realize that you were thinking about laundry for the last 4 songs. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
did all your changes and you switched instruments
Oh,
and you hit your marks,
100%.
it's no problem. But then there's a subconscious reconciliation between like, how much of this is real? How much of this is not that it matters, but these are the things that I worry about anyway. And then doing it as a dramatic presentation, you're putting on a show and it makes it so clear. And I would have to imagine that changes your experience on stage, even beyond the superficial differences.
Well, it's like there's 2 things that sort of come to mind. One is like, I've become friends with a bunch of stand-up people and, they work on their hour.
Yeah.
I have a pal, this guy, Alex Edelman, who we've done stuff with before. And I saw his show in Cherry Lane Theater called Just for Us. And it ended up going to Broadway. And I saw it a bunch of times in between. And watching iterations and watching him work on this show and change every night, he would change like a little thing. And it would be like, oh, I'm going to pause a little longer here. And then that was really instructive. And then, of course, when we did our musical and I was in the workshop and then I was watching it, especially during previews where we were like, as soon as the show was over, you go and you talk about what happened, and you're like, okay, we need a breath here. We got to get this costume change has to be better. We got to kill this line. Musically, this isn't working. We need more drums. And you start, instead of being like, oh, every night is a new set list or whatever, you start to work on these little tiny, like basically imperceptible microscopic elements that then add up to this thing at the end that becomes like a 1 or a 0. Like, did it work? And I think that's it's a completely different muscle than we ever experience as a band that does change their set list, not that radically, but pretty radically every night. And then having to do it, we're like, I don't want to play this Talking Heads cover again every night. Like, there's a song that we had on a live record that we play this Talking Heads cover. And I was just like, by the end, I'm like, I don't need to play that song again. And normally we play it twice a year. And so I was like, okay, there's the downside of it, right? But being forced into that sort of, and we would swap out a couple songs, but being forced into that repetition where you had to find how to tweak it. We would talk about lines like, hey, you're jumping on my line here,
Yep.
or give that a little more space, or let's do the dance number this way tonight. Like, was really interesting. And we learned so much. And I don't know that I prefer it because it did allow for that laundry, that 4-song laundry internal dialogue to come in more frequently because you're like, oh, I know where we
You're
are.
hitting
like,
marks, you're saying lines.
Yeah, I'm saying lines, which is crazy because, we're not actors, but there was like, of course I'm thinking about the email that I forgot to send, for like 3 songs, but then I'm doing it while I'm singing, playing guitar, moving my pedals around. Like it is a weird little thing that we do.
It's really amazing what you can do. And it's fun to realize like the tiny little, and again, doing it the way that you did it as a more deliberate dramatic presentation is maybe an opportunity to be a little more conscious of those things. And those little moments are things that when I noticed them, I found to be my favorite part of playing shows. Have you played a non-Eras gig since that tour?
Yeah, there'll be some of that this summer. And then when we go out with B&L, I keep thinking about June, we're going out with Bare Naked Ladies and we're playing 45 minutes. Like we were doing it was a 2.5 hour with an intermission. It was a 2.5 hour night. Like, I'm just like, holy shit, man, it's going to be cake. And like early, I'm going to be done at like 7.
That was like the Weezer tour we did. It was like, we're hitting the stage at 6:30, playing for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Now we were chasing a bus, so then we had to get off stage and drive 4 hours and sleep 2 hours, but still
not fun.
I wanted to ask, because we were talking about my band ending, and it seems to me like you guys have had a really good, positive run. And I was going to ask, was there ever a moment where you genuinely considered ending it, or where it seemed like it might end itself? And then you just mentioned making your first record, right? Was that the one that was the horrible LP experience where you almost broke up?
No, it was the one with, it was like 6, maybe the 6th album or something.
Oh, okay.
Like we worked with this producer. He completely undermined. It was a little bit of that nursery rhyme thing in a way, not really, but it was consistent of just like, every instinct that you have as a musician, he would undermine. Like, and it was just like, eventually we didn't know how to make, and we tried to be yes and with producers. That's why we like pick producers. Like,
Sure.
okay, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're here for you to guide us and to give into your system, you know? And when we gave our confidence to him, we just were not speaking the same language, and he was not a good person in a way. Like, he wasn't a good human. And so it completely undermined our ability to like, know. We just didn't even know what was happening anymore. We didn't know how to make music. It's like we had nothing left at the end. Like, everybody peeled off one by one. It was just he and I in the studio. And it was like, after that, we just didn't talk. It was the first time, probably the only time, where the wheels came off the bus and we just like didn't talk for like a couple months. And I didn't know if it was like over, but then of course there's like a total redemption arc, and we went and made the record ourselves, and it was, you know, that part of it was great. But like interpersonally, we weren't even mad at each other. We were just completely demoralized. It was almost like we entered a cult and we lost our personalities or something.
Well, the band takes you make the band out of friendship to some degree, but then the band becomes like this holding thing that your friendship is part of, but not all of. And like, then if something like that happens that is poisonous for the band, it can take a minute to differentiate in your mind. Like, do I feel bad about those guys? Do I feel bad about those relationships? Do I feel bad about some business thing that's not related to any of that? And because it's all in the Guster basket, or that's how it always felt for me.
Yeah. It's the most complicated relationship that you'll ever have, because you spend, I mean, I will have spent more time with those dudes than even my own children.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy. And like, you don't know that. Like, you know, we didn't meet each other that much, but we also met each other as teenagers, you know, and you don't know that you're choosing a life partner when you're like, hey, bro, you want to jam in the dorm room?
And a business partner.
And someone, and now like someone that has your image in their hand. You know, like I think about this shit all the time when I'm just like, fuck, the guy in Mumford loves Jordan Peterson, and now all of a sudden the band isn't playing festivals anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like, what the fuck? Like, that is crazy that we have that much power over each other's lives. And I say that sometimes to my wife. I'm like, when we talk about life, I'm like, yeah, well, the band, I don't know, I might not be in this band forever. And she's like, yeah, you will. And I'm like, dude, you never know. Like, and I'm not getting into cancel culture or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, something can happen and all of a sudden the whole thing can go away very quickly.
Yeah. Each of you is like a load-bearing pillar for this towering, swaying, complex apparatus.
Exactly. And really, any one of you could just completely torpedo it at any given moment on accident, and not even, you know, or just by wanting to speak your own personal piece. I mean, I'm just really lucky, again, that the people that I'm in this band with are kind and intelligent people that have made a lot of good decisions around who their life partners are. Like, all the wives are amazing and
really important,
you know, like, that have support systems in place, and, you know, no addiction issues and no mental health breaks, you know, that are no fault of anybody's. Like, just got really lucky that that's the case. And I don't take it for granted. And even this thing with the Kennedy Center, like, I'm really glad we're aligned, because it's like, it's a pretty hard thing to parse. Like, what do we do when half your fans are telling you to cancel and the other half are telling you got to play the show? And I'm glad we all agree on this. Like, I'm glad we all are aligned. So it's really then we're just talking about what kind of language we use. You know?
Because it's another thing, as much like exposure as there is, as much vulnerability as there is in sharing this important thing with these other pillars. It's also like, man, when it works and you have guys that have your back. I've talked to people who are doing solo careers, who have been since the beginning of their career. They was their name, their show, they pay the band, they hire the band, whatever. And it's like, when they're getting fucked with, they're on their own, or they have their friends to lean on or their team to lean on, but they don't have someone else who's in the boat with them.
That's right.
100%. And I don't know what I would have done without that. It got us through so much.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I've always kind of had that, and I've never I think about, like I said, our management works with like Tillman from Father John Misty or Lucy or Mitski, who are all like solo artists. So the way that they work is completely different than how our band works. And and in some ways I'm like, oh, it'd be great to not have to ask permission to do half the shit I want to do. But also like, it's also just makes it better. Like my songs are not as good before I send them to the band.
Yep.
Then our band isn't as good as if I just hired a bunch of people to play these things. Like I wouldn't have this cool percussion player. I wouldn't have Adam on bass. Like, so yeah, it makes it really, bands are fucking mysterious creatures.
It sounds like Guster has a pretty ideal career from the outside looking in. Is there a band you're jealous of or that you've been jealous of?
Oh, all of them. I mean, yeah, 100 million bands. Like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of frustrations in the band, especially, and it's helped a lot, but like not being cool has been hard. I always felt like your band was in the cool kid club in the, in New York scene. And you were like, yeah, we were not invited to those parties. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really like, I'm so happy. I'm so honored to be able to do this that I don't actually get mad about stuff as much earlier that much anymore. But there's a few times where I'm like, oh, if Satellite had been a bigger song, like when it came out, and if it had gone gold in like the first 6 months it came out instead of 8 years later because it was on playlists, would we kind of be playing? Because also the Eras Tour was the biggest tour we had done, and we were starting to play, like we played not the biggest places we played, but like we were playing like, like in Boston, we played like a 5,500 seater, and it was like at MGM, and it was sold out, and it was like, oh, this feels good. And like playing Red Rocks, it's like, fuck, man, like feels nice to be able to go in those, like, and I am not complaining about playing to 2,000 people most nights, I'm not, but like, you can kind of see it just like, oh man, like it's good up there. Like going to see Death Cab and stuff and being like, and really the thing that is really on the bucket list for me is just international. Like I love touring so much. I love traveling. And I've been to Cleveland 30 times and I've been to Austria twice,
right.
And like, so it's like, it's a little bit like, that's the only thing where I'm just like we're pals with like Not a Surf, and then like, they'll get to go do like 1,500 person rooms in Europe and like not lose money. And I'm like, fuck, that would be so fun. Like, I'm again, not complaining, but like, if I rephrase the question as like, what do I still want to do? Like, some kind of international presence would have been fantastic. And it's probably too late, but I mean, I could still go there, but
sure.
That's real fun watching your friends get to go do that shit.
Yeah. Some of my fondest memories from my touring career, and we were not playing 5,500 cap venues. We were not playing 550 cap venues, but we were breaking even, and we were spending 3 weeks touring in the UK and Europe, which just has it's just a different experience. It has a different flavor. It has a different energy from top to bottom. The gas stations are different. The rider food is different in both directions. And it's just like, it feels like you had gone somewhere. It feels like you're somewhere different.
It's like because I think that is part of like what the dream of being a rock star, at least for me, it was about, because I love exploring. I like people, I like eating things, seeing things, meeting people, and like the whole thing. And like you go to Europe and all of a sudden you're like, oh fuck, or Japan or South America, and all of a sudden it's that 50x. You're like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm going to be in Barcelona tomorrow. Like, what do you mean? Like, of course the multiplier is like insane. So that's not a regret, because I think it just didn't happen for us, but I'm so jealous of people that get to go do that. I'd be like, fuck. I mean, do you have an answer for like what band career you would want that feels like idealized, knowing all this stuff that you know now?
Guster. It genuinely sounds, I'm being a dick, but it does genuinely sound, what you guys are not just able to do, but all interested in doing is stuff that reminds me of the really great early days of our band. And it was very like, making music was one of the creative things we did. We also would like make pillows or build a drum riser in the garage or paint the bass to be to match the drum kit and all of those, or like get a video camera and make
it was all
half
a big
of a
art
movie.
project.
It was just all a big creative bleh.
Yeah.
Then the band became a band and you had to start focusing more and more on the music. And I found with where we were in the industry, every time once the music started going, we found a new creative outlet. For a while, we were really into making vlogs. We got those old flip cams, remember?
Yeah.
We loved going to iMovie and just making these goofy nonsense, like high school project style videos.
Totally.
And our fans liked them because it was an extension of our sort of Canadian youthful running around energy. But then it took like a month for the label to be like, one per week. Here are the criteria. Like, here's some people to help you out with it. The next one is premiering on like spin.com. And now instead of this goofy joke, it's like, 12,000 people are going to comment about how this is like goofy in the comments. Now I've become self-aware about it and it's ruined.
There's no part of me. And I think that this is true that like, I have friends who are famous who've lost their anonymity. No, it's just not worth it. Like it's not because of the lifestyle that I want. And of course I have like other friends who are famous and they get invited to parties that I'm like, oh man, you got to go to that dinner party? Like, tell me who else was sitting there. I would have loved to have been at that dinner party. Like for me, it was the only thing that I would want out of being famous would be kind of about getting invited to the cool dinner parties, mostly so I could talk to those people because I like talking to those people, but also like with that target on your back. And like, I don't know if I mentioned, like we did a TikTok that blew up about Chris Brown.
Oh yeah, you were talking about it last week, and now you've got the Chris Brown online army,
and they're all there, and I'm just like block, and I'm like, this sucks, man. Like I liked it better. It's fine, and actually, I'm not complaining because it's not really a big deal. But I just a reminder of just like once everybody has to have an opinion about you, that's the line you don't want to cross. If you can stay just under the line where people have to say if they like Billy Strings or not, that's the issue. Like, that's where I want to stay, just under that. And those people have the best lives, I think.
I went to the Boy Genius show when they came to Toronto, and obviously it was really cool to be there, and you could feel the moment was happening. It was ram-packed, big outdoor amphitheater, not an inch of space on the lawn to sit, electricity in the air. But also, I wouldn't want to be in Phoebe Bridgers' position, man. And that's scary to me. That's like genuinely kind of frightening to be exposed in the way that she is to the energy that it's obvious is flowing around her. And it's more power to her. I think she seems to thrive on it. But thank you.
Can you, that's what's interesting. Like I was literally talking about this the other day with my buddy. I was just like, can you imagine what it would be like to be Taylor? Like, and be like, oh, you've sunk the Latvian economy because you canceled your show there. Like, that scale is just not interesting to me. Just feels like misery to have to like, I couldn't do it. And go and maybe the post, like the PS of that is God bless those people that can like, but God bless Phoebe Bridgers for getting through it every day. Like, cause it's gotta be impossible to please people.
And you can wind up artistically trapped by it, and that you don't have to be big for your fans to not want you to change your music style. But the bigger you are, the more you're making a product for mass consumption. It's like if I go to the grocery store and they changed Pepsi every 2 weeks, I would not be thrilled. I'm buying Pepsi for Pepsi. And there's once you're selling music to 1 billion people, a certain amount of them just want Pepsi.
They want Pepsi again. This is like a Joe Rogan layer, the amount of time that we've spent together.
It's true. And now I have some political statements to make. By way of putting a food-related button on this, I wanted to ask, on the Eras Tour and more generally on tour these days, what's your approach to eating around being on tour and living as an adult person on the road while eating food?
Like this last tour, I tried something new. Well, I have my Google Maps is insane.
Oh my God, I bet.
It's crazy. Stars everywhere. And I had a Substack for a while that it's not done, but it was like a little bit. And I had an app. There's a whole other 4-hour conversation, but
next Tuesday.
So I am after it. And I started a little text message there with my buddy Adam Schatz. He plays under the name Landlady. He plays with Japanese Breakfast and Nico Case, Eric from Dr. Dog, and Alex Bleeker from Real Estate.
Okay.
And he wrote a book about food on the road. I was like, dudes, on this tour, I wanted all right, I'm in Baltimore. Like, where am I? But I want Middle Eastern. And because between the four of us, I figured that we could do it. But because especially on the bus, like I wake up and I'm in Pittsburgh and I don't have anything to do till 5.
Yep.
So like I want to find the thing to eat or like the museum to go to and or, you know, the art to see or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm very much like I want to find the thing I can't find anywhere else. It's one of the best parts about touring is just getting to eat Syrian food in North Philly and being like, holy shit.
That's inspiring too, because I couldn't agree more. And yet I fall into that proximity trap all the time where it's like, well, the venue has a pub. Maybe I'll just have wings again.
Oh God. Yeah. No, I don't really, although I skipped dinner too. So I was really only had one day. Yeah. I'm a consumer of towns. I don't know if that helps answer your question. Not a very...
It helps answer my question of next time I'm in Cleveland, who do I text about where to get Syrian food?
So let me ask you one last question. Please. Then. What would be the one thing, like, all right, I got lunch. What's your number? What's your lunch in Toronto? I got one lunch.
I'd probably take you to the Federal. It's just like Ontario diner food. They have a good brunch. They've got a good, burger, a couple steak free things, just good vibes in there. And there's one right near it called Milou, which is a French sort of oysters, martinis, but it feels the most Parisian of anywhere I've been in Toronto. It's all film directors talking themselves up at every other table.
Okay, that's good. The Federal's
great and Milou's great. And always hit me up if you need any Toronto recommendations. And also, if you're in Toronto and I'm in Toronto, we can carry on this conversation in a more three-dimensional capacity.
My new hack that I figured out last time, because Montreal's an hour and a half from us, is we took the train from Montreal to Toronto. It's incredible.
Only way to travel. Have you gone to Joe Beef in Montreal? You must have.
Oh, yeah.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to know.
I still think it's up there.
I mean, I'm not cranky about it at all. I mean, I've been there. Yeah, it's great.
So the answer to the final question from Ryan Miller of Guster, Joe Beef, mid. Thank you very much for appearing on the show. You're banned from Montreal. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Le Bremner.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for being our first returning guest. I loved it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me back.
Ryan Miller from Guster, great talk. Major label debut's first ever 2-part interview, hopefully not our last. I could talk for another 30 minutes about all the things that conversation taught me and all the thoughts that it provoked, but you've just listened to like 2 full hours of Ryan and I talking, so I will spare you any more of my thoughts for now. Major label debut is produced as usual by John Paul Bullock and Josh Hook. Greg Alsop wrote, performed, produced, etc., created entirely on his own with his own 2 beautiful hands. Our theme music. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Ryan for being on the show. Thanks to everyone for everything they've done. I'm just filled with gratitude all the time. My cup runneth over. And if you have anything to say to us, whether that's ideas for guests we should have or albums we should discuss or, current events we should pontificate about, please feel free to reach out. We love to hear from everyone via all the social medias and, all the internet stuff. Just don't DM me on Instagram because I never check it. Yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for listening. Major Label Debut will be back with more tales from the intersection of art and commerce. See you then.